What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and there's not really a lot to talk about, but this is day 2 of mandatory minicamp, and day 3 is tomorrow. It's only 3 days in length, but this is the last day that is open to the media, so it's going to be the last day where there's going to be direct insight from the media about what's going on and stuff. Tomorrow it's going to be closed, and so probably less news, but there is some important stuff to talk about. One being that Emmanuel Ogbah is apparently nursing some kind of minor injury, so he was not on the field today. It's minor. We don't know specifically, probably just like, a hamstring or something like that, I'm guessing, or whatever, some kind of soft tissue, something probably, or I don't know, whatever. Maybe he tweaked his ankle, who knows? They didn't give specifics, but hopefully that's, nothing that becomes a major injury, obviously, because he's expected to be a huge part of the defense. But it is, of course, only still June. We're only halfway through June, and it's only expected as a minor injury, so hopefully nothing that will keep him out. Maybe if he doesn't practice tomorrow, then whatever, but hopefully he's ready by training camp, because like I said, he's expected to be a big part. Preston Williams is there but not working with the team, because he's working his way back from his foot surgery, and he's expected back for the season. This is per Barry Jackson. He tweeted this out. And then Xavien Howard is obviously not there either, which is not a surprise. And like I said, I expect that situation is like the most, unfortunately. Look, so I'm a person of probabilities, and as much as I want Xavien Howard to stay on the team and I want everything to be fine, I want them to pay the dude, I want him to fucking blah blah blah, what have you, I want him to be there, helping this team win this upcoming season, whatever, right? I definitely don't want them to trade him. But unfortunately, I think the highest probability, when I evaluate all of the data from the situation, to me the highest probability outcome is that this situation continues to devolve. And look, the more that it devolves, the less likely it's going to turn around and get good again, right? So I expect him to skip all of minicamp, and I do not think, again, to reiterate, I do not believe the Dolphins are going to give him an extension before training camp. If they don't give him an extension before training camp, or do something with him before training camp to appease him, and meet his terms, come halfway at least, whatever, right? Have some kind of compromise and get him into training camp. If he holds out at training camp, then things get exponentially worse, right? And so it gets exponentially worse if they don't come to the table and compromise with him. That's the next thing that'll make this worse, right? Then Xavien will respond and and hold out longer. So that's obviously going to be something to keep an eye on, but there's going to be a bit of a break. We're not going to get into that until mid to late next month, so we're going to have a few weeks of a little bit of a lull, just because of that. So it'll be a little bit quiet, but when that time comes around, the thing is, the one thing that we can keep an eye on in that particular instance, and for that context, is the talks. Are there talks going on? Are they at the table? Are they, what's going on? Is, and with every day that passes, is something, been agreed upon, and is Xavien Howard going to show up to training camp? Because again, if he doesn't show up to training camp, that is a pretty big deal. But for me, I think he is well within his right and deserves to, go after getting paid like the best corner in the league, because he was unquestionably the best cornerback in the league last year statistically. He's been a beast for a while. Yes, he does have the knee issues, but that's part of it, and that's part of the reason why he deserves to do it, because it's you know, and people have talked about this, you know, what about when teams just decide to cut players, right? Nobody gives the team shit for just cutting players. Everybody's like, oh, okay, great, we get to fucking save cap space and blah, blah, blah. Maybe we can get a younger, cheaper player, whatever, right? Like, so why do people get upset? No, the difference is, and why it's actually more reasonable for the players to go after their money. It's funny how people give no shit to the you know, billionaire owners and to the corporation side of things, to the business side of things, but they shit all over the players. Guess what? I got a fucking revelation for you. It's the players that are putting their lives and their bodies on the line. Okay? They're the ones that have to go out there and take a physical beating when they get onto the field for game day. It's not the business side of things. It's not the owner. It's not the front office. It's none of them assholes. Okay? So I don't know why. I mean, I understand why. It's because we live in a capitalistic, individualistic world, and people are greedy and selfish, and they only think about themselves and their own personal fucking narratives, right? So I understand why it is, but it's gross. And really, Xavien Howard is full within it, because he understands that he's probably only got, you know, a couple years, 2 or 3 years left, where he feels like he can for sure, you know, I mean, maybe he feels like he can go longer than that, but I think him and his agent are probably smart enough to understand that, especially with his knee issues, which he's talked about before, that he's got to try and get it. And look, part of the context, it's not just that the cornerback market was reset by like Jalen Ramsey and these others. It's also because the Dolphins decided to pay a cornerback, Byron Jones, significantly more money than they're paying Xavien Howard, and are part of the reason for that cornerback market reset. And that's the problem. That's one of the biggest contextual problems here, right? For Xavien Howard is that he's half the cornerback that Xavien Howard is, and he's getting paid more? No, it doesn't make any fucking sense. And he's not being a crybaby. He's not being selfish. He's doing what's right by him and his family and his, you know, his people, to get as much money as he possibly can during the prime years of his career, before he hits that point in a couple years from now or whatever, where he really starts to decline, because that's just what happens when you get older, and he's getting closer to that 30 mark, right? So it makes perfect sense. It's 100% not just within his right, but makes perfect sense for him to do this, right? And, you know, again, it's the Dolphins' fault that they're in this situation to begin with. Again, because they are one of the major pieces that reset the cornerback market. They decided to overpay a guy that was not even close to worth it, and pay him more than your star cornerback, who just led the league in both interceptions with 10 and passes defense. He had more interceptions last year than Byron Jones has had his entire career. And his stats last year, Byron Jones, weren't that good. They just weren't. Okay? And so, you know, I mean, it's facts, but people skew the facts and change them to fit a narrative. People say that, oh, you know, Xavien Howard only got 10 interceptions because Byron Jones was on the other side and he's so great. No, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous, because you just look at his fucking stats, and his stats alone, let alone the play. You can watch the tape, and the tape shows you that he wasn't all that good either. Okay, but then you look at his stats. For all the people that love to just look at stats, you know, for their face value, like the people who say that, you know, Tua was a smart decision maker because he was 11-5 touchdown to interception ratio, and look, he was 6-3 as a starter, and that's his fucking, you know, a silver lining. Like, if you just want to look at his stats, they weren't good. Anyway, so he's well within his right. He should be doing this. The problem is, though, is because the Dolphins helped to upset the fucking the market, and also because they set themselves up in a terrible cap situation, so they have like no fucking money to pay the guy. They are going to likely set themselves up for a scenario where this devolves to the point where he demands a trade. Look, if they don't give him, the way that this is going to work out is at this point he is skipping minicamp. If they don't at least fucking agree to something, right? Compromises obviously have to work both ways, and both parties have to be able to fucking sacrifice and meet halfway, right? But that means the Dolphins have to too. So they have to give something to Xavien Howard that him and his agent are going to like. But again, he just recently fired his agent, got a new one, and they're obviously going to be playing hardball. So if they don't give Xavien Howard what he wants over the next month before training camp, then there's a high probability that he holds out of training camp. If it gets to that point, somewhere around there, maybe even before then, it might even happen before training camp, honestly, because that Xavien Howard demands a trade. If we get a couple weeks into the future, right, 2 weeks from now, if the Dolphins are like, yeah, we're just not gonna fucking come to the table and talk to you, which is a very real possibility, and you know, if they keep harping on, well, you know, you just signed, you know, the contract just started a year ago. Yeah, you signed it 2 years ago, but and this is true, he signed the contract 2 years ago, but the first year of those 2 years he was still on his rookie contract because it was an extension, right? So he has only played 1 year of this new contract. That is true. But if they just harp on that and be like, look at all the money you have and blah 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 blah, and we're not coming to the table, then he could say in a couple weeks, all right, I just want to be traded then. I want to go, and somebody's going to be willing to trade for him and pay him what he wants. There will be a team, at least one team, that will be willing to do that. I guarantee it. Absolutely guarantee it. And so they will be like, all right, I want to trade. If that happens, and the reason why I say it could happen before training camp is because then he will likely want to get into training camp with his new team, right? And so, look, man, this honestly could come to a head very quickly. And it is something that is gonna, you know, I actually spent way more time talking about it today, but there was some, you know, significant things to add to it, to the conversation. But look, that and the point here really is that over the next few weeks, you know, this thing is going to, you know, and I've been foreshadowing this for much longer than the past, you know, few days, right? This is only really, I mean, you know, there have been trade rumors for a little while now, but, you know, I think I'm the only one that's really been saying that I think at some point they're going to end up trading Xavien Howard away, and because they're, you know, of something, and it looks like we're getting close to that point. All right, anyway, I do want to move on though, because there are other things that I want to talk about, including, you know, more stuff from OTAs. So look, yesterday and today and tomorrow is only minicamp, and it's still the middle of June. So my point about stuff like this is it is important contextual data to be taken into consideration when evaluating the big picture, right? So these are not things to leave out when evaluating the big picture. You have to make sure that it's part of your overall calculations and the equation. However, it is also a, you know, in the equation, right, there are many variables, and this happens to be a smaller variable, right? No matter what happens in minicamp, it is not going to be indicative necessarily one way or the other of what's going to happen in the regular season for a number of reasons, right? Injuries alone, that's one of the primary ways in which a team can be changed, is significant injuries, right? but injuries alone or other things, right? There are lots of other things. Like, for example, in Adam Gase's second year, there was so much adversity thrust upon them that they had no control over. A hurricane, getting displaced, traveling more than any team, having to go to London and cross country a bunch of times, more than any other team traveled all year, and they just had to do that in the first few games. Linebacker goes AWOL, no bye week, etc., 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 right? Just so much adversity. Shit happens like that, right? And so that's why I say Adam Gase often got blamed for things that weren't in his control. It's not his fault that he had all those things happen to him. Anyway, so it's fucking minicamp. Having said that, right, and so the 5 interceptions, it doesn't really necessarily mean anything, although I am going to get into that a little bit more because it does apply to the greater overall contextual information. So today, though, he apparently had a much better day, a bounce back day. They were connecting on deep passes, getting a bunch of touchdowns. The defense still had their moments. They had a few pass breakups. I think there was an interception. At some point it started raining again because it's South Florida. They ended up having to go into the bubble because there was lightning. And that's really about it from minicamp today, right? Now, again, today and yesterday, neither means anything, right? Yesterday doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to go out and throw interceptions all day. Today doesn't necessarily mean he's going to go out and be a world beater and ball out, right? Because it's just training camp. They still have a long way to go. However, and the reason why personally I look at yesterday and say, because here's the thing, right? And so Brian Flores and Tua both pretty much echoed the same things. Tua said this yesterday, Brian Flores said today, and he pretty much echoed what Tua said in the reasoning for why Tua threw 5 interceptions. Again, to be fair, and I said this yesterday, it was raining really fucking hard. Okay, so that obviously is a factor that goes into it, but that's something that he has to be able to do because it's South Florida, and that's something that should be an advantage for him. In the same way that the Dolphins get to practice in that South Florida heat, and that's why the heat is an advantage for them because they're used to it. That is something that should be an advantage for him, and it shouldn't cause him to have fuck-ups, right? So that's something that he does need to get better at, but that was a factor. But the reasoning that they gave was, well, we were intentionally trying to be more aggressive, and at this point in the season, now's when you want to make your mistakes. Which, that part I absolutely agree with, 100%. You would rather have your players make their mistakes now and get it all hammered out and perfected, so when the season comes, and that is obviously part of the advantage of having OTAs, minicamp, training camp, etc. So that is 100% true. However, again, it's not like quarterbacks across the league and the world unanimously fail at that. There are quarterbacks that are really good at it. Some quarterbacks are really good at, being aggressive, taking deep shots, getting it into tight windows. Some quarterbacks aren't, right? Even Ryan Fitzpatrick, he takes a lot. Now, to be fair, we know what Ryan Fitzpatrick is. He has his really good games, and then he has some really bad games, and he'll throw some, 1, 2, 3 interceptions, right? Now, we hope that that Tua doesn't end up becoming like that and have those serious ups and downs. But the reality is that yesterday in practice, he wasn't good at it, right? Again, it's only practice, so it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to replicate this in the season. We hope he doesn't, and he can't. If he does, then it's going to be a long year. I think that there is a high probability that ends up happening. In part because I don't think that the offensive line is going to be as good as what people think, etc., 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 with the rest of the contextual information. But the simple fact on its face that he did it in practice doesn't really necessarily mean anything. But you add in the rest of the contextual information, and up to this point, he wasn't good at it in practice yesterday, and last year, he wasn't good at it either. during the season when he played, he wasn't good at it. He was terrible at deep shots. And especially when you look at the additional information of the adjusted interceptions, adjusted turnovers, he actually wasn't all that great in that department either. So that's something that he has to not only work on and improve, but prove to us, not just me. He doesn't even have to prove anything to me, really. It's just to the fan base, to the organization, to his teammates, to himself. He has to prove that he has learned the playbook, that he has gotten better, and that is not going to be an issue this upcoming season. Because again, if it is, then it's going to be a long season, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, and with the information that I have, right, not just Tua's performance last year, you know, et cetera, but also, again, the offensive line, the rest of it. I think that the defense is going to take a step backward, significant step backward, especially, I mean, if they end up trading Xavien Howard, the defense is not going to be the same at all. They cannot afford to lose Xavien Howard, but if they do, that is going to be a massive disaster. But, you know, you guys know how I think the season is going to turn out. I don't think that this team is going to perform at that level, and I think that you know, Tua is going to struggle, and I think it's going to come to hit. Look, again, for me, it's not so much about the person or the player. I like him as he's a great kid, right? And you know, in a lot of ways, and he says the right things, and he's a hard worker, and you know, et cetera, right? Like, cool, that's great, and I've never said that I don't like his skill set. I'm worried about him being an undersized and injury-prone quarterback, and that's a major reason why I wouldn't have taken him to begin with. I absolutely would have taken Justin Herbert over him in that regard. But there are other flaws of his as a player that I am concerned about, but overall, that's not my issue. The issue is the overall context that he is in. I do not believe that he will be able to develop to his fullest potential and reach his fullest potential here with the Dolphins, because I don't think the mixture is right. I don't. Across the board, with the coaching, with the, you know, the stuff around him, right? The offensive line, the weapons, etc., the defense, etc. I don't think it's the right mixture. So it's not the person or the player, it's the overall thing. Now, he is going to contribute to that, right? He is going to be a part of that one way or another, their success or their failure, and he is going to be a factor in that equation, and he will be evaluated along the way. But I'm never going to say that it's 100% his fault, because that is insane, right? So anyway, that's really about all I've got. I did want to, you know, touch on some things from yesterday, which I did, you know, and to obviously also give you the updates from today, and, you know, talk about the Xavien Howard thing a little bit more and add some more context to that. So look, again, and just to wrap it up, we're going to have about a month where it's going to be relatively quiet. I mean, there's still going to be stories to talk about. There may be some signings, some cuts, right? You know, stuff like that could happen. Obviously, the Xavien Howard situation is going to be a huge thing to keep an eye on, right? And how talks progress. I mean, like I said, in a couple weeks, there is a real possibility that if things do not, you know, progress, if there is no progression, then there is some chance that Xavien Howard says, I want to trade, right? Or his agent comes out and says that they are requesting a trade, something along those lines. So that's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on, because if we get rid of Xavien Howard, look, and even the people who, I'm sorry, one more quick comment on that. Even the people who think that Xavien Howard is being selfish and a crybaby, whatever, and he's wrong for holding out, and, you know, the people who then say, we need to trade him and let's get 2 first-round picks for him or whatever, even if you think that, here's the thing. If we don't have Xavien Howard on this team, that defense is not going to be even close to the same, which makes it even more likely that the team performs to the level that I say they're going to perform at and only win maybe 6 games. In fact, though, if they lose Xavien Howard, it drastically increases the probability that they even win less games, because Xavien Howard was 10 of your interceptions last year and 1 of your fumbles. Okay, so if you take that away, now is he going to replicate that? No, but he's obviously your best player on the team and on your defense. If you take that playmaking ability away, if he's gone, okay, then last year, right, you know, people want to throw to a 6-3 record out there, but it was his defense that pretty much fucking took care of business, and his special teams as well. They did like 90% of the work, if not more, okay, throughout every single one of those games. So, like, you know, I mean, it's astounding to me that people would be like, oh, he's just being a crybaby and selfish, and now we need to get rid of him. Dude, be careful what you wish for, because if that happens, I'm telling you, that is going to be a major disaster for this team. And then maybe you do get 2 first-round picks for Xavien Howard. But then if that happens and the team completely shits the bed, I promise you that Brian Flores and Chris Greer will not be the ones using those picks. Because if they only win 6 games or less than that, especially after trading Xavien Howard away, and then if your defense fucking takes a super big step backwards, I promise you, I guarantee you, if that unfolds, Stephen Ross will be firing the both of them and hitting the reset button again. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. If they trade Xavien Howard away, the defense, it takes a major step back, the team shits the bed, and they win 6 or less games, promise you, both of them are getting fired. Anyway, so it doesn't make any goddamn fucking sense why Dolphins fans would be, you know, clamoring for that. Because look, again, and they're just up in their feelings about it. And they say that, you know, he's being selfish, but do they ever say that their team, their beloved team and organization is selfish when they just, you know, cut players or fucking, you know, the way that they constantly shit on players? And as a matter of fact, people give Brian Flores even more credit for being ruthless in that regard. So like it's absurd, but that's why the world is a shitty place, and that's why people are never going to get it, you know, get anything right, and why we are destined for mass extinction, because people are pieces of shit, and that's how it is. So anyway, it is what it is, but these are things that we are obviously going to be keeping a very close eye on, and actually could get some updates in the relatively near future. So if updates come, we will give them to you. I will give them to you. So, all right, it's long enough. With that, I'm gonna get out of here. I hope you guys appreciate my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.